It's a fantastic Friday morning, some feel-good Friday coming your way, some youth perspective, just taking a look at what this whole revolution means.
And yes, of course, you know what we'll be talking about. It's been happening. I'm not even sure if it has ended yet, yes. Because as at midnight, 2 a.m. into the night, Moy Avenue was full of Gen Zs. And there was a DJ somewhere. I don't know who organized for that. There was music.
Street bash.
And guys were just... I gave up. Yes, Danton Kitumbini, Josephat Kamanya, and Hans Ropp will be in studio to help us understand what exactly is happening with this new generation and the protests that we're looking at. Yesterday, members of the National Assembly got the first opportunity to vote for the Finance Bill 2024. Now it moves from the second reading into the committee stage, where those proposals and the concessions that we're talking about the previous day on which tax will be removed where will be considered. That is yet to happen yet. Yeah? So ile reject finance bill, haijakuwa rejected, it's still very much alive. All right.
All right. Now from
a quick look at the headlines this morning.
From youth perspective, kabla tuingie kwa headlines.
Oh yeah, it is
ile kudade.
Feel good Friday.
Yes.
Ngoma inaendelea.
DJ Noti anatupatia some feel good vibes. The ladies will be joining us later on, Bansi Kimuyu and Gashambi Nderito. Stick around for that. And then
Ruto, you betrayed us. Sio mimi nimesema.
Ni gazeti imesema.
Gazeti, so unaona?
Yeah.
This is the stand at the front page. Yes?
At 3/4 of...
And the entire page is dedicated to this same story, that protest that happened, what Treasury did, and what happened in Parliament, and who voted how, yes. In as far as the members of the National Assembly are concerned.
A youth revolt.
Yes.
Eish. Lovely.
I tell you.
Since
3-word headlines.
Yes.
Wamesema nini hapa? Okay, this is 4.
Yes.
3. A youth revolt. Hakuna kusema mambo mengi.
Tafakari. Yeah.
Tafakari. Wewe fikiria tu. Look at the images there on the front page of Taifa Leo.
And I love the fact that Taifa Leo has given a collage of photos from different places and a bird's air view.
Can you imagine if it was you on this photo at the center of the front page of a daily in 2024? Like this. And then your parent anakuambia ninakungoja ukuje nyumbani, kuna iko shida.
Alafu anakuona Nakuru ni Mombasa.
Okay, Business Daily goes with the normal, okay, fine, still the long sentence, still the same story though.
Yes, and this is going to be happening today. It's very interesting, the fact that yesterday it cut for education among other entities. Now today, kwa diary, CS Treasurer atatokea bunge awambie.
He needs to explain.
Awambie, sasa juu mlikataa.
We need 200 billion shillings in budget cuts.
Yes.
Yes. It is what is being termed as blackmail on the front page. Storm over 200 billion shillings treasury budget cuts amid blackmail claims.
On the People Daily.
Same word.
Blackmail.
Blackmail.
Yes.
And it has to do with that those budget cuts by Treasury. They said, kama mulisema tutoe hizi taxes.
Aya.
Tunakata.
When party yako basi.
So that's the front page of the People Daily. On the Star.
A collage of photos there.
200 MPs vote yes as demos hit major towns. And this is what many people had not expected. They thought it would just be Nairobi. In Eldoret, this wheelbarrow was brought down.
Nakwambia.
Wow.
Kuna wengine walikuwa napanda mti wanasema yes. Zakayo shuka.
And let's do this. Let's even in Uganda.
In Uganda.
Where's that one? How did you miss that? Come on.
Director tusaidia na Daily Monitor.
The Daily Monitor in Uganda also makes reference to what's happening in Kenya. And I don't know how you failed to load that one. Kijana bwana. Anyway, let's look at the New Vision. On the New Vision in Uganda this morning, MP's probe stretches back to 2008. Yes. It is still a big discussion what's happening with the parliamentarians in Uganda and the probe into various allegations of corruptions against their legislators. So corruption in Uganda even overshadows discussions around the budget in Uganda. Remember, even in Tanzania, they're still talking about the budget, but in Uganda, the budget has been forgotten. Yes, that's the Daily Monitor. This is a paper in Uganda, Kampala. They're talking about Kenyan youth erupt. 3-word headline, just the same as what's happening in Kenya.
Sahi, Gen Zs wa Uganda wanasoma hiyo nashanga.
Wanasema, wow.
Is this possible?
Is it?
Kai.
Lakini tunasema, they should have chosen a better photo.
Bana. Wangetafuta hata ya.
Ulikuwa na mayeng yote
yes. Bana. Walitafuta tu, yeah. You know?
Bana.
Inatisha hadi.
Hizi ni zile sura zinaitwa tingirinya. Sura tinginya. Misuli tinginya.
Inatisha.
the images in town yesterday were a bit different. But yes, it is a discussion that has actually crossed the borders. Oh, yeah. I saw some international media dedicates a lot of time, broadcast media, even up to 11 minutes. 11 minutes.
Wow.
Coverage of just the protests in Kenya. Larry Madowo of CNN was doing minute-by-minute reports of the protests as well, so the entire world was watching.
Including Tanzania, kwenye gazeti la Mwananchi pale juu, maandamano kupinga kodi mpya Kenya yashika kasi.
Yes. How many times do we have a story from Tanzania or Uganda on our front page?
On our front page, unless ni ile amacho ile, the IDCs.
Oh yes, the red eye.
Yes, the red eye. Some peculiar things happening in Tanzania.
Yes, but it's captured there, maandamano kupinga kodi mpya Kenya yashika kasi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi gazeti la kule Bongo. But habari kuu pale, mazungumzo yao ni kuhusu serikali yajitia kitanzi upya. Waziri mkuu ataja mikakati maagizo kuwalinda wenye ualbino nchi nzima, wadau waibuka na mitazamo tofauti. Focus is still on that little girl with albinism who was abducted and later found dead with the parts of her body missing. And that story is a very sad one. And it still features on the front pages of dailies in Tanzania.
Which the Citizen front page also makes mention of it. And, well, okay, the big story, police misconduct, will rule of law ever prevail? The recent detention of online journalist Dina Maningo, held without bail or court appearance for a week, has reignited concerns over police actions, even though she and 2 others were released on the 20th of June. They're having, well, sort of a similar conversation also happening in Kenya, the mistreatment and the arrests of journalists. But then they also make mention of...
oh yes, what's happening in Kenya features on the front page of the Citizen as well. The top strip, thousands of young Kenyans protest tax hikes. So hii ni habari ambayo imegonga vichwa vya habari. Not just in the region, across the globe. Yes?
Right. Time now to take a look at the traffic.
Yes,
and see
the
how
traffic situation. I don't know if guys have moved out of town because they were in town late into the night, but hopefully by now they've moved out. But a quick look at our traffic situation this morning, and the major tributaries into town look clean. It is a Friday, hakuna haraka ya kwenda anywhere. Of course, at the Pangani interchange, we do expect, as always, a bit of a snarl up there. Kidole yako nono imeguza hapa.
Yangoma yako.
So this is what is happening here. Yes, yes, this is City Square and what's happening in town. Most of the major tributaries into town look good, but if you look at Thika Road coming into town, it's green all the way up until when you get to Pangani, and that's normal traffic, nothing much to report there. Jogoo Road also looking busy. Okay, Jogoo Road is a bit busy today. It's a normal Friday for Jogoo Road. Bits of snarl-ups here next to Mbotela, Makadara Low Courts, and next to the City Stadium roundabout. After that, it's smooth into town. But of course, you expect a snarl-up just before you get to that Landis Road and then Marikiti area there, which is normal on a Friday as people buy their groceries for the weekend. Mombasa Road into town is looking good. Past Imara Daima, Next Gen Mall, South B, Capital Center into town, it's looking good. So does Langata Road as well as Ngong Road into town. Ngong Road, all the way from the interchange with the bypass, past Junction Mall, all the way to the city mortuary roundabout, it's looking good. The other major tributary is Wayaki Way from Gitaru, that's Kikuyu interchange, all the way into town. Also, nothing to report about. Remember, as you get into town, just past the museum hill, there's some construction going on, so there's a bit of a snarl up there. Part of the road is closed to traffic, so do expect a bit of a slowdown on that section of the road. Otherwise, everything else is looking good this Friday as at 12 minutes past 6.
Let's take a look at the weather and see. I'll take a look at about 2 places. Ntaanza na Longonot and its metropolitan regions around there. Sahini 8 degrees
but it
Celsius.
Feels like 8.
Yes, 9, but it feels like 8. But then it promises to get somewhat hot into the...
What are you calling hot? 16?
Somewhat. Angalau, at least.
What? This is Longonot. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
About 16 degrees Celsius. And it's... Environs in Nairobi, 14 degrees right now, but it's quite chilly in the morning. In case you're waking up right now, usitupe duve haraka.
You can imagine what 8 degrees feels like. Yeah? If we're feeling this chilly in the morning and it's 14.
How about now you're in Guinea?
And Longonot.
Oh, yes.
Right.
But then around Nairobi, it promises to get hotter into the day, about as hot as 22 degrees Celsius into the morning. So in case you're also thinking of now going to the streets again, that is just how things will be, well, looking like.
All right.
For this morning. And speaking of how things are going to be looking like, we can take a look at the diary and what to expect. So I had mentioned the whole matters budget cuts by the Treasury. And so as of yesterday, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary is expected, so he's expected now to today submit a list of additional entities that will face the chopping block meant to fill in budget gaps to the National Assembly if the revenue-raising measures in the Finance Bill 2024 are not approved. So the Treasury is eyeing to fill 21.6 billion cash shillings balance deficit. So far, education, health, judiciary, security, energy, legislature, and devolved units are among the departments that have received a budget cut. Wow, okay. This is going to be interesting to see how it is going to play out. On the next page, the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Performance and Delivery Management, Moses Kuria, is expected to lead a collaborative exercise among government delivery service officers in a move that seeks to enhance their performance and service delivery within government in line with the better or commonly bottom-up economic transformation agenda. This is also going to be interesting to see how it will play out, because while a number of Kenyans really complain on the service delivery they get in a number of government institutions, as long as it offers service to you, the kind of service delivery inakuwaga pale, ule mtu unapata pale, kidogo ni kama amechoka pia
na ushalipa ushuru.
Something else interesting that will be happening today, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, that is EPRA, will be holding a public auction today. So the auction will take place at their premises at Eagle Africa Center. So according to a notice on Tuesday's MyGov issue, so they say the authority will be selling laptops, cameras, phones, and tires, among other items. So in case you're interested, kuna public auction hapo ya EPRA.
And what was the laptops, phones, and what?
Tires pia, among other items. Imefikia hapo, Fred.
You know, when you talk about selling tires, and just thinking of bonfires on roads.
Oh, yeah, true, by the way. Something else that will be happening today, a tribute for Fred Omondi, the entertainer, a fundraiser show titled Fred Omondi, The Last Laugh, will be held at Carnival Restaurant today as a tribute. So this is a whole drive to even make sure that the public contributes into the fundraiser. He will be laid to rest next week, the end of this month. Into the sports desk, finally, there's something called the Mountain Running World Cup that is happening all the way in California. And about 2 Kenyans will be representing us. That is Patrick Kipngeno and Philemon Kiriago in this particular event. That, in a nutshell, is a news diary. Stick around for more updates. Right now, though, let's get today in history.
On this day, the International Criminal Court (ICC) sentenced the former Congolese Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba Gombo to 18 years of imprisonment for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in the Central African Republic between October 2002 and March 2003.
All right, let's now delve into the dailies this morning to see what the big headlines are talking about. We start off with the Daily Nation, and they talk about a youth in revolt. That's the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Thousands of young Kenyans from across the country yesterday joined protests against the Finance Bill 2024, demanding that the controversial tax plan be thrown out altogether, even after the climb down by President Ruto. And their swelling numbers should send a message to MPs and their parties, who they warned, we are watching you. Sio mimi nasema, that's the front page of the Daily Nation. And this story has been extensively covered. The Daily Nation has dedicated acres and acres of space. That's pages 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 and 11. Those are 6 pages dedicated to coverage of the anti-finance bill 2024 protests. They say leaderless and partyless, the Generation Z protesters have one common enemy. Now, they've even mapped out, there's a map of Kenya, and they've mapped out where counties where these protests actually took place. And it looks like it is majorly on the western part of this country. Of course, down at the coast, Taita, Taveta, Kilifi and Mombasa also reported instances of protests. To the central area of the country, Nanyuki, Meru, Nakuru, Nyeri, Kiambu, Nairobi, Machakos and Embu also reported. Once you go to the western part of the country, Eldoret, Kakamega, Kericho, Kisumu and Kisii also recorded quite some activity as well. Even Lodwar. Yes. In Turkana, hata walisema
tumechoka.
Oh yes. The other story given prominence, of course, is the kind of activity that took place inside Parliament and the voting. That now moves the Finance Bill 2024 to the committee stage of the National Assembly, where all those tax proposals and the amendments to the same will be considered clause by clause, amendment by amendment. So they say that yes, despite the protests, President William Ruto won the first round in the battle over the finance bill, with his troops marshalling 204 votes to push the proposed legislation past its second reading. Other highlights on the front page away from the top story: CBC here to stay, rules High Court. And this is a story about Justice Hedwig Ongundi and 2 others who have directed the Education Cabinet Secretary should formulate laws that would align CBC with legal structures in 120 days. Also a mention of the slain magistrate Monica Kivuti. Why slain magistrate had to cancel bail for fraud suspect. That story is on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Let's flip the page. And yes, on the back page, more on that CBC story. What exactly was the issue? The initial petitioner has adopted out after claiming she was being profiled by the government. Another story, budget boss. That's Dr. Margaret Nyakango urges counties to adopt modern accounting systems. And that's the Daily Nation this Friday.
Gazeti la Taifa Leo, tafakari, inakuwa very interesting kuona Taifa Leo wakiwa na just one word as a headline. Wanasema tafakari, na baadhi ya picha kutoka baadhi ya maeneo kadha wa kadha nchini, ikiwemo Nairobi, Eldoret, Nakuru, Kisii, Kisumu, ile mwanadada pale na ile firimbi, pamoja na Nyeri, Kilifi na Kakamega. Wanasema vijana katika maeneo tofauti ya nchi jana waliendelea kutoa onyo kwa serikali kwamba wako tayari kutetea maslahi yao kwa kuandamana kwa amani. Sema bila kuongozwa na wanasiasa, maelfu ya vijana walijitokeza katika kaunti tofauti kupinga mswada wa fedha. Pale juu, masuala ya siasa, other dailies haven't really talked about this story. Nimeiona tu pale kwa Taifa Leo, pressure Weta ajiunge na chama UDA baada ya ANC. Shinikizo zinazidi kwa Wetangula ambaye ni spika wa bunge la kitaifa, the National Assembly, kuvunja Ford K. Masuala ya michezo, Ujerumani ndani 16 bora Euro, ni mara ya 5 wametawala michuano yao kutoka mwaka 1972 hadi 2012. Na hiyo ndio baadhi ya vidokezo kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo.
Tuangazie gazeti la Business Daily. On the Business Daily, they talk about the storm of a 200 billion shilling Treasury budget cuts amid blackmail claims. Now, Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u yesterday raised a storm in Parliament over his warning of 200 billion shilling budget cuts should MPs scrap a handful of proposed taxes in the finance bill, with legislators accusing him of blackmail. Now, this is a catch, because this is where the rubber meets the road, because the day before yesterday, of course, the National Assembly Committee on Finance and National Planning said, okay, fine, we've listened to Kenyans, and we have actually decided to remove this number of taxation measures or proposals that were there. Yeah. But then Treasury comes back and says, now, if you do that, this is what you're going to do. We're going to slash the NGCDF budget. We're going to slash the equitable share to counties by about 5 billion shillings. And the total budget is usually like 8 billion. That means there's no equitable share equalization fund, actually. It was the equalization fund, not equitable share. The equalization fund. So how do you slash half the budget of the equalization fund? That is what they're talking about. That's what they're calling blackmail on the front pages today. Because those cuts target some of the most sacrosanct parts of that budget. And interesting enough, on the front page of the Business Daily, they've actually included a photo of the protests. They rarely do this.
So basically, this was Treasury telling even the National Assembly, we know what we were doing when we were putting those numbers there.
Basically, they were saying to our
don't carry us like that.
Don't carry us for fools. We know what we are doing. Hey. So this debate is not over yet.
Oh, yes.
I had the president in Garissa saying that the budget, the finance bill should be passed. Did he say it should be passed without amendments? Not sure. That debate is still out there. But yes, it is still a big debate. Other highlights. So
basically, unasema even as Gen Zs out there, bado wasi.
Kueni macho. This debate still goes on. The National Assembly will be back on Tuesday to continue this debate. Other highlights on the front page of the Business Daily. Heineken, Kenya tycoon fight heads to Supreme Court. Sanlam to wind up 3 subsidiaries as losses up. Ex-BOC chairman raises his stake. And finally, Kenya FDI flows deep 12 billion shillings on red tape. That's the Business Daily this Friday.
All right. I had not taken a look at Daily Nation. They say a youth revolt. Thousands of young Kenyans from across the country yesterday joined protests against the Finance Bill 2024, demanding that the controversial tax be thrown out altogether, even after the clampdown by President Ruto. And their swelling numbers should send a message to MPs and their parties who they warned, we are watching you. They have an extensive coverage of that on pages 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11. This morning when you take a look at gazeti ya Daily Nation na Daily Monitor, unaweza confuse kidogo by the way.
I tell you, it's the same paper.
Unaweza nunua gazeti ya Daily Monitor ukidhani it's a Kenyan paper.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Love how director ametokea the similarities.
Hata Uganda wanazungumzia Kenya.
Kidogo unaweza dhani that's a Kenyan paper by the way.
And you know that's a problem. Okay, let me not give you suggestions, but that's a problem. These things do tend to have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Once it happens in one area, then you start seeing ripple effects in neighboring countries or countries that share common issues.
Yeah. The kind of geopolitics on the same. Other headlines on the same, on this particular Daily Nation. Actually, yes.
I'm wondering why you're going back to that one.
I thought we'll come Standard on the same. On People Daily, yes. Take a look at People Daily. House of blackmail is what they say. Treasury warning to Parliament of cash cuts. Twist MPs to push finance bill to another stage despite countrywide protests by young people. Extensive coverage on that, pages 3, 4, 5, 6, as well as 14. Another headline on the very top, officers in Ruto men kidnap claim now to face murder charges. And well, finally on the front page of the Star, the collage of photos there. And well, this paper is the one that has shown 2 photos that we haven't seen. The front page of the Star, President William Ruto, who was in Garissa yesterday, as well as tourism, the tourism CS, Alfred Mutua consoling David Maina, the policeman who lost both hands after a tear gas canister exploded. He was in Nairobi West Hospital.
All right.
That is the only story that they're covering, well, as well as their Siasa pullout. What happens to ODM party strongholds after Raila exits?
All right. You mentioned the Standard. On the front page of the Standard, Ruto, you betrayed us. That's a big headline. Gen Z's message to President after more than 200 MPs voted to push through unpopular proposals. The opposition joined protesting Kenyans from across the country, including in the president's home backyard, in denouncing this move, with Gen Zs telling President Ruto, you have failed us. And the story is covered on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Standard. Now, the Standard has done us justice there and given us the list of all MPs who voted yes. Yes, it starts on the front page and continues on page 8. And they give the name and the constituency you come from. Asema huyu alipiga yes. Hawajasema nani alipiga no.
In ile social media
wanasema things have changed.
In ile Gen Z tunasema inject.
It is boiling nicely. And well,
sasa kuna ingine apart from boiling nicely, sasa kuna inject.
Okay, inject.
I
see. Okay, fine. And that's the front page of the Standard, because we need to take a look at the cartoons as well. Do you have the Star? Final look at the Star so that we can move on to the cartoons.
I had taken a look at the Star. The Star only has that one, the whole collage of photos there, saying 204 MPs vote yes as demos hit major towns. And just taking a look at how it was in different parts of the country. In Nairobi, a protest pulls down UDA party wheelbarrow symbol in Eldoret. A demonstrator kicks a tear gas canister during protest in Nairobi, as well as tourism CS Alfred Mutua and the president, who was in Garissa University for the 5th graduation ceremony as well. That is the start. We can now delve into the cartoons.
I'd want to invite Bansi to come in on set as we look at the cartoons, so that she can take us from there and tell us more about Gen Zs. You know,
yes.
I was telling you, there's so many yesterday on the streets, and that's why we were saying the Daily Monitor in Uganda should have picked better photos. Kuna mayeng wengi sana kwa barabara. Daily Monitor imetafuta sura tinginya na what is the other expression? What do you want to
sura tisti.
Good morning, gents.
Good morning, Karibu.
How are you guys?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I think it's been a beehive of activities this week.
It's a bit too busy.
It's a bit too busy, especially from millennials and
you
Gen
guys
Z.
don't know how to rest.
No, I think it's good to know that millennials are the ones who are championing it, and also Gen Zs. Like it's a mixture of both. It's not only Gen Zs. Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, it's not a battle of who is doing what and not. But I think the revolution.
But we do agree there's an age factor in all this.
Yeah, I do agree, definitely.
It's in fact, our parents watching at home are like,
What's
are you guys sure what you're doing? It's you're a bit too much.
Because my dad was actually telling me, I think we have fought for this country enough. It's now your time. Yeah, you guys do your thing.
Wow.
And I think, like I said, it's been a beehive of activities this week, and it was interesting to watch the parliament proceedings, especially from Mumia's MP, Peter Selassie, who was quoting articles that were saying different things from what
that don't exist. And let me tell you, as I'd mentioned, on the Daily Nation also, because we've said the Standard has also given the list of how people voted, the Daily Nation has done the same on page 10. Out of the 333 MPs, they've actually given a list of who voted yes, who voted no. Okay, fine. Here, they've not given the constituency. Yeah, the Standard has actually said this MP, the name, constituency, and how they voted. On the Daily Nation, it's only the name and how they voted. And that sometimes is a bit confusing because do you know who your MP is? Do you know his or her name?
Yes, I do. Beatrice Elati. She voted no. Okay. I'm very proud.
Okay.
Yes.
What did you I had like constituency jina.
Nothing.
You know, sometimes, anyway.
How about you, Freddie?
Let's move on.
Freddie, you should tell us
where I come from.
Yeah.
But you see now,
what did your MP vote?
Generation. I'm still scared of revealing so many.
Okay.
Remember, kwa data protection.
Hey. All right. Interesting.
So let's take a look at the cartoons this morning on page 15 of the Daily Nation. Harry, the cartoonist from the Standard, Harry, also talks about the protest. You know now Harry initially was just talking about Europe and Russia, but his depiction of what's happening this time round, at least he's come back home. And he talks about the protests and draws a parallel between the protests and what is happening to churches. The pastors are just thinking about money, according to this cartoon on page 15 of the Standard. While protesters are telling them, do something, actions speak louder than words. That's a cartoon on the Standard this morning.
On Daily Nation, quick before Gen Z's vote in 2027 is what this gentleman in a brown counter suit is saying. Na kuna a very huge hand trying to force the Finance Bill 2024 down the throat of Parliament. Na polisi wengine hapo akirusha tear gas.
So he seems to be suggesting that better pass the Finance Bill 2024 now,
right now,
before these Gen Zs get an opportunity to vote in 2020.
You know, Gen Zs have been posting and saying the only problem with me as a Gen Z is that I want to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow in 2027 and go and vote.
The problem is about Gen Zs is that probably some of them have had 2 opportunities to vote.
But
most of them are not even registered voters.
That's true.
And they've not even taken part in
But this is this is a wake-up call, to be honest, because definitely Gen Zs are going to be voting in 2027, and I believe that the voting in 2027 will not be along tribal lines, because now people are educated about the Constitution, about the bills, about the things that actually matter, regardless of the age, you know.
Because right now, someone who's in Form 1, who's 15 years old, by 2027 they'll be about 18 years old. So they will be eligible to actually vote. And they're seeing all this, even despite the fact that they're in school. And it's also even a wake-up call to them. They're saying, okay, so this is what I'm expected to do when I'm out. This is what I'll do. So come 2027, it's going to be maybe things going to be different.
No, I think in 2027 that Gen Zs and the young people are going to be holding their leaders accountable, and it's interesting to see that the list has come out of those people who are saying no, those that are saying yes, because come 2027, people will remember who was on their side, who was not on their side.
So you actually
a lot of the discussions may have changed by then, but the fact that this group is a bit woke, and has a better understanding, and even they're even proactive in going to look out for this information and get a better understanding of things that previously people didn't care about.
Or whatever you do today on page 10 of Katai page 10 of Daily Nation, ama your standard, just hang it somewhere.
And remember,
watu wa butchery tafadhali msitumie kunini nyama. No, weka hii mahali. 2027, you refer to it.
Of course, this conversation will continue on the youth perspective with Danton Kitumbini, Josephat Kamanya, and Hans Ropp. Do stand by for that conversation. But it being a Feel-Good Friday, we have a lot more in store, even beyond, you know, I saw that Moi Avenue was still a beehive of activity late into the night. Actually, this morning, 2 a.m.
It's interesting to see because Kudade outside. There's a club, I think, on Moi Avenue. I think it's Avenida, I'm not sure. The DJ thought he was coming to play for the people inside the club, but he ended up playing for protesters as well.
So they had to bring their speakers out onto the streets.
I think it was interesting. We live in interesting times, to be honest. There's a picture that was trending for the better part of yesterday on Twitter, where there's a guy who was on top of a traffic light. And someone said this is Rio de Janeiro and Rio de Janeiro.
Interesting. So what do we have in store for our viewers
I think
later this morning?
It's a Feel-Good Friday, and of course quite a lot has been happening in the entertainment scene. More specifically to see that a lot of Kenyan celebrities have come out in large numbers, you know, just to reject the bill, including Shiko Moshi, who is an actress, the likes of Kimanzi. Kimanzi actually came out dressed as a watchman, you know, just to confuse the cops. He was in character, and it's also been a sad week. Eric Omondi lost his brother sometime last week, so the entertainment industry is in mourning. But Kenyan celebrities have assured him that wako naye pamoja, and yesterday they came out with placards written, "We're here because Eric Omondi could not be."
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Interesting.
Also in the entertainment industry and the art industry will be engaging Elias Hagos. He's an artist all the way from Eritrea. He has an amazing art pieces. So we'll be getting to do that with him live on air, just with some sketches. Pia mimi nijue kuchorea story.
Oh, okay. Okay, that sounds
I saw what he did there.
Yeah, pun intended. I see what he did there.
All right. Yes. The front page of Taifa Leo, habari kuu pale inasema tafakari. Sasa tunachukua muda kidogo ili tutafakari. Mapumziko. Tafakari, tunarejea na mengi zaidi. Usikose.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that, so when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO and the rest of.
What point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy, who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring, switches, and smart home tech. Step 4. From paint choices to fixtures, it's all about aesthetics. Step 5. It's time to get the right furniture. Finally, the big day. Time to move in and create memories. Join us on the journey to making homes a reality on The Realtor, Tuesdays 6:30.
All right. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. Time for us to take a look at the youth perspective on state of the nation. The front page of the Taifa Leo reads tafakari, habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Tafakari, mambo yanayoendelea. A youth revolt on the front page of the Daily Nation. Ruto, you betrayed us on the front page of the Standard. House of blackmail on the front page of the People Daily. In Uganda, the Daily Monitor says Kenyan youth erupt. That's a big headline on the front page of the Daily in Kampala, Uganda. They are waking up to this. This story has also made it to the front page of the Mwananchi in Tanzania. Maandamano kupinga kodi mpya Kenya yashika kasi. And on the Citizen, still in Tanzania, thousands of young Kenyans protest tax hikes. A story also features on the front page. This morning we're privileged to have in studio gentlemen who will help us understand or delve into this discussion. On my immediate right, Hans Ropp, political analyst. It's a pleasure to have you at TV 47. Karibu sana. Yes. Josephat Kamanya, a familiar face on this panel, also makes it today. Also a political analyst. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
We are hoping Danton Kitumbini will also be joining us as we go along. But let's start with the discussion. This, many people have dismissed what has been happening, Hans. And on Tuesday, when we saw the first wave of protests, many people said probably it has been organized by some political leaders, some civil society, and yes, there are people who have been financing this and the other. But looking at the crowds yesterday and similar happenings in different areas, because the Daily Nation has actually given it to us, the map of Kenya and the different counties where protests were reported. And one wonders, is it possible to marshal or get all these people to come out to the streets just like that? We've seen previously, even the Maandamano that was associated with the Azimio, the opposition, did not manage to actually get this kind of outcome. Do you believe that this is actually organic, that is not being manipulated, that it is not that there are people who are behind this kind of outpouring into the streets?
Actually, Fred, my observation will be a bit different. The demonstrators who were in the street were a bit peaceful this time around. There were no destructions, there were no kind of stealing from people doing business in the streets and so on. And also we want to comment that the police were not that really rude or rough on the protestants. Therefore, there tend to be a lot of access to town and cities in the country. And that's why there have been large numbers of people who can express their interests or their disappointments about the bill. So somehow, to my thinking, there is a hand behind, and probably from the human rights, and also from, like, if you study, there is importance of what we are being taxed. There's a reason why taxation should happen, and there's an importance of doing it. But then one of the things is that there are people who makes it political, and therefore, if you also even now the parliament has fought it. Those in Kenya Kwanza have fought it, yes. The other in Azimio have fought it, no. There is still no proper discussion. It is still political. So even the people who are in the streets were driven politically. There are people who are funding it against the government.
Who would you give credit for this kind of action? Who exactly is it? Is it the opposition? The formation we call the opposition? Is it the civil society? Who would you give credit for this kind of activity?
More, I'll give it to the civil society. And also this bit of politics, but then more of civil society. Because if you check even the youth who are protesting, most of them are not even afforded, most of them are not even employment, probably they don't understand what taxes is, most of them are not even being taxed. So I think that we really need to check into it more better and see what is could be behind, but there is more than it being natural.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josephat, of course, this has been the ongoing debate even online, and a number of government-linked bloggers saying that this is not organic, We had even parliamentarians saying that some of the images we're seeing are AI generated, that there's no way this can happen the way it has without proper organization. Are you persuaded by that argument?
Well, good morning to our viewers. And Fred, it's getting interesting because we had this sort of a forecast when the finance bill preparation was in play. And we said it was going to be chaotic. And here we are today. First of all, I support peaceful demonstrations. And largely, I believe this is an organic process. And I say this because we are not seeing a lot of politicals, persons who are directly involved politically out in the streets yet. Although we saw a section of the MPs trying to join after yesterday's second reading. But what has made this more organic is not more due to political affiliation, but this is an issue-based discussion. And I'm liking that we are getting because when we were campaigning for this government, we said we want to have an issue-based discussion. This is exactly what is happening. And if you look across the country yesterday, from all the clips and the photos, there was no other discussion. And yet we come for the protests were across the divide of the nation. But the only issue people are talking about is the finance bill. This is going to continue, actually. And it's a conversation we need to openly discuss and agree that we've come of age and time, whereby Article 37 must be respected, the right to picket, the right to demonstrate, and the right to converge as Kenyans.
Okay.
I also want to appreciate the forces because honestly, they have, it is now a disciplined force. I can qualify that statement because when you see all the counties yesterday, there were no major conflicts with the police. It's unfortunate. I think we've lost one female. So this protest should not just go unnoticed like that. And I hope there will be no more loss of life. But the conversation must continue to have. It's not done yet. Yesterday was only the second reading. That reading is coming. After that, if it's taken to the president, we must wait to see what he's going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Allow me to welcome to the panel Danton Kitumbini. Danton, karibu sana. Danton is a political analyst. Danton, we're trying to examine the debate on whether or not these protests are organic. We've seen a lot of debate on whether there could be a hidden hand somewhere that is fueling this, financing these protests. Many of the protesters say they are not affiliated to any political leanings. Many of them are not, they're just saying they came out of their own volition. Many of them understand the issues. They don't look like they've been paid, but there are those who claim that there's definitely someone or a force or an influence behind this. Do you agree with that assessment?
Thank you so much. First off, I would like to pledge my condolences to the young man who lost his life during the protest. But the way I want to look at it, it's hard to want to believe someone was behind it at the onset of it, because there was circulation of so much videos, so much posts about the whole finance bill. In fact, from the beginning of the reading of the budget, people were well informed, people were perusing, people were having discussions, especially the young people on Reels, on TikToks, on Twitter. Everyone was talking about it. So it was a building momentum kind of thing, not someone who decided to pinch or what. What I'm observing now is politicians want to take advantages. Take advantage. Yes, but that was not the case. This is very organic, and it will be sad for we people on the side of the government to try and ignore something that is organic, because what people are advocating are issues, are real issues. If we read the finance bill, if you see the streets, people are protesting against issues, not against the government, not against a man, not against a political party, but it is against issues, and I think it's time we we also give them an ear and listen. What are these issues and what can be done? As much as my friend earlier said, you know, there is a reason we want to tax, but you know, people don't have, not necessarily have a problem with us taxing, but is there a better way of taxing us? Is there a better way of taxing us and putting to use the money you are taxing us, you know? So that is the way I'm looking at it.
Okay, but that assessment that probably it's not organic because it's mainly coming from government-affiliated bloggers and communicators, that in itself could indicate a lack of proper response to the same. What do you think the risk is if at all this administration or the state actors are not able to respond to this in the right way? What kind of risk does this portend?
Yeah, there's some risk that can be spotted because even if you see the kind of demonstration that is happening today, it's because of lack of proper civil education, proper ensuring that there is a proper knowledge of why taxation is happening. Because there are people, we will agree that most of a good percentage that are in the streets today do not really understand what is being taxed. It's just a few things. Somebody picks something like
don't you think that is enough understanding or comprehension, the fact that they know the highlights of what people are discussing?
Actually, they know. And it has given it today a discussion that there are many who do not know, and there are few who understands. And probably they could only pick on one thing like bread and make it like the whole finance bill is bad. Whereby there have been also a listening government. If you observe even the chairman for budget, what has been said over the weekend, that we've listened to what Kenyans are doing, and therefore we are going to change. And there have been changes about some of the things that are not going to be taxed, like bread, edible oils, and the others. So when there's a government that has listened, and when you listen to the demonstrations that were going on yesterday, they were still pursuing the same things that have already been worked on or that have already been edited to reduce the taxing in them. And therefore, one thing I would say is that because of the miscommunication that could happen or lack of civil education, there could be a bad reaction. But we would really advise that the government should go ahead and make sure that there is proper information to the people.
Do you agree with that, that this government has probably, up till now, probably failed to react to the wave of protests that we're seeing in the right way? That maybe they expected that protests would have the same form as what we have seen before, and the kind of response that would be required for this new style of protests is not forthcoming.
First of all, anybody who tends to think these protesters in the streets have no understanding of the finance bill is clearly misguided, as the government is. And this is the most woke generation we're having. And if you look at the previous, what you'd call revolutions we've had, dissemination of information was very minimal. But today, if you go live, you're going to have 1,000 viewers, 10,000 viewers. And like Han says, people have been, in the last couple of weeks, going through the finance bill, through reels, short videos, going live. And we've seen even some MPs, like I saw MP of Kitongori, trying to inform the public. So people know why they're coming out. I could be coming out, and I may agree. Maybe I'm coming out because the price of bread was going to go high. Maybe he or the other person will be coming out because of the sanitary towels. But the point is, the finance bill affects the livelihood of all Kenyans. We must understand that at first. Secondly, taxation without representation is illegal. You cannot keep on raising taxes on one end, and service delivery on the other end is not efficient. There is a lot of spillage of resources. So Kenyans are saying, we are not willing to pay more for less. That is one. Already, this is a hugely, the current finance bill we are acting on is overstretched. And that's why people are saying, reject this one. We continue operating with this one until we have a better formula. And let me stretch it further and say, I've seen the president agitate for a new financial architecture for African nations in other forums. I would want him to know, I know he's going to hear this, his financial architecture that he's trying to orchestrate for Kenya is failing. It's not applicable.
Wow.
He has to sit down with his team and come up with a new plan. Let's not sound good. Let's not be let's be more pragmatic and agree that if you look at the current finance bill proposal, the development agenda only captures maybe less than 30%. We have a lot of debt to pay. And then we have these ambitious projects that Kenyans are saying, we are not interested because they're not going to directly impact our livelihood today. Kenyans want the cost of living to go down. If this finance bill goes through, petrol goes up by 7 shillings.
9, actually.
Precisely.
Per litre.
And you see, it had only gone down with 3 bob the other day. So the moment, and you know fuel is an economic mover, the moment the price goes up, cost of production actually is going to go high, and then the price of goods is going to be passed on to the consumers. So to think that these people do not know what is happening is erroneous, is misguided.
Okay.
Parents are giving protesters bus fare to go to the streets. I've spoken with a few, and they're saying, my son, my daughter sat me down, and because guys can access the information.
Broke it down for me.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, they said, I want to go to the streets. What do you need? A handkerchief and a bottle of water. Be safe. So people are involved, and people are saying, we have to be listened to. This is now where we talk about delegated authority. Kenyans saying, you being an MP, you are not an authority by yourself. We have delegated from our constituents, specific constituents, we have delegated our authority to you. Go to the House of National Assembly, legislate over the matters that affect us. And I liked what you guys said earlier, that we should save, I think, page 10 of the Daily Nation, where everybody is listed on how they voted, the MPs. Because come 2027, anybody who is voting yes, although we still have 3 more finance bills to contend with, will be going home, including the president if he assigns to this.
Yes.
Yes.
Dalton, the issue has always been that the political elite in this country has existed and taken advantage of that level of ignorance within the masses, that many people have never bothered to scrutinize the budget-making process properly over the years. This time round, people are taking time out to actually go and read not just the finance bill, but the appropriations as well, the appropriations bill, to know where the expenditure is going. This means that the masses have changed completely. Do you think, in as far as communication is concerned, that the state and the political elite understand and are adjusting to this change in the masses and the comprehension levels?
No, it's worth noting that the trend has shifted. We've had finance bills all along. In fact, even in the former regimes, we've always had financial bills. But then, in fact, the only time during Uhuru's time when we've had this kind of debate was only once, when I think the fuel levy was being, the 8% fuel levy was being introduced. That was when Kenyans came out to discuss, But this time, it's only when we're having people understanding the budget is actually different from the finance bill. The finance bill is actually different from the finance committee proposal. So people, when the finance committee proposes, people have a conversation. When the budget is out, people have a conversation. And this, all this awareness did not start yesterday. Did not even start with the finance bill. I think we started seeing this kind of momentum begin when the president started going out in expensive jets outside. People talked. And then we've had 200 million, 300 million for set aside for renovations of State House, for the DP's residence. So people, and then we came again, we had the former president saying, I'm not getting money for this. People came out and like, are we using this amount of money to fund a former president? So people are having, okay, what is our money exactly doing? And then the bigger question we're having, because now people know what the finance bill is all about, what did the finance bill 2023 help us now that we're in the finance bill 2024? If the 2023 bill introduced all those punitive taxes, what is there to show for it?
Okay.
You know, so people are like, okay, there's no so much to show for it. So are we ready for other new taxes if there is nothing to show for?
And you said something very interesting, that Kenyans now have a very interesting and progressive understanding about where your money and how your money is being spent. Yes, when we come back, we'll be looking at how the money is being spent and the areas where the government now says it'll have to cut down now that there are proposals to do away with some of those taxes contained in the Finance Bill of 2024. That after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3.
Still watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue looking at the state of the nation, the youth perspective. Of course, the main story being the protest over the Finance Bill 2024, which was yesterday passed through its second reading by members of the National Assembly. It now proceeds to the committee stage, where each of the proposed amendments will be considered individually. Even as we have that discussion, and that's why I was asking about the communication and the reaction of the government to this kind of protests. Of course, the National Assembly Committee came out on finance and national planning, came out and suggested a number of proposals, did away with quite a number of those tax proposals that many Kenyans had raised objection to. But now yesterday, Treasury sent out a list to the National Assembly on the effect that this doing away with these tax proposals would have on the budget, and it means budget cuts. And some of the areas targeted include the Equalization Fund, pending bills, NGCDF, ongoing TVETs and TTIs, Higher Education Loans Board, HELB, meaning that some of this appear to target the very people who are actually on the streets. And hence, my question is this the kind of reaction you'd expect from a government in quelling the kind of generational conversation we're having, that this is what we're going to do directly to you and the things that matter to you if you continue doing this? Is that the right kind of response?
Just to respond first to what Kamanya said before, is if you try to observe is that a government comes up with a budget for a whole financial year and how to finance that budget. That's where we end up in finance bill and how it's going to be taxed and what to tax. We know the kind of state the government we are in as a country, that we have a lot, we tax to pay debts, and therefore we have minimal in the budget for development. So we really have to go beyond to see on what we can be taxed more, and Kenya should be part and parcel of doing this so that we don't do more borrowing. Because if we do more borrowing, we borrow. When we borrow more, the country will not be in a state to sustain itself by funding itself. So there are things that I think, as I still say is this, there are many things that are not more exposed to us as Kenyans to learn more on why the government are doing this and doing the taxes. But to my own personal observation on what the Treasury is recommending to cut out on issues like for the help is what I may not support as a youth, because I know there are many students who really need that money. And I know what education can turn around maybe the life of a person. So there are many things that we know that can equalize a small person or somebody who has more much exposure to reach to the kind of any kind of goodies in the country. It is through education. So if anything, actually, the one for help should be harder, and that is what I think.
Yes, but Kamanya, you see this kind of reaction where, and the list is long because it has at least over 50 items, actually 57 items in the budget that need, they say now if we go that direction, we will have to do away with this. And I may not be able to read all of them, but county equitable share 5 billion shillings, which I think the proposal was about 8 to 10 billion shillings. That's like half. Of course, they've mentioned like cuts in domestic travel and foreign travel for Parliament, the National Police Service, but there's so many things that touch directly on the youth in this list. And sports academies, they're going to slash. ICT Authority, 6.7 billion, slash. Things like NGCDF, where bursaries do come from. Provision for medical interns, you know that conversation, and interns are basically Gen Zs, most of them. Yes. Pending bills, young people doing business with the government, university infrastructure projects, infrastructure for primary and secondary schools, school feeding program. Basically, they're suggesting that these cuts, the ones suggested by the National Assembly Committee on Finance and National Planning, will be painful directly to the Kenyan youth. Is that the kind of communication that you expected the state to have in response to this kind of protest we're seeing?
Definitely not. And it's highly responsible for the state to give such a response and the Treasury to suggest such cuts. One, they're trying to whip emotions, because even remember, fertilizer is one of the 57 listed items. And this was one of the campaign tools, and the government was saying, when we get into government, we are going to bring down the cost of fertilizer. Now I think they're slashing 5 billion, so it could probably go higher. I also saw my friend, the chair of budget, Njoro, trying to whip emotions in parliament. And
using the same list?
The same list, telling them, the members of parliament about the NGCDF. 50 million, you won't get it. But the crux of the matter is not even the allocation as of now. and Hans is talking about the help. Clearly, everyone understands the importance of education in this nation, and we would want to see better education for the nation, because a learned population is an empowered population. I mean, what we're having now is as a result of what the late President Kibaki did. Free education, because Gen Z were the beneficiaries, and then he expanded the tertiary education platform. Remember, we used to have very few universities, but colleges came up, and then campus did mushroom, and these are the people who are out in the streets now. Almost all of them have either a certificate or a diploma or a degree. That is the impact of education. Had we continued on that trajectory of free education, today we would not be needing the NGCDF to be bloated, only for it to be taken back to the constituent and dispersed in form of bursaries. We have a very incompetent house, I must say, at the National Assembly, because they are discussing details instead of legislating over issues that are affecting the country. The issue of education, we should have had this conversation before and agreed that we need to bring down the cost of education, so that you don't need to go for help, you don't need to go for bursary. It is the same government. For a long time, we have agitated for collapse of all these education funding systems to one formula that lowers down the cost of education for everyone. So that I don't have to come out as an MP and bribe you with your bursary. It's your money. And it has become that the bursary is now the marking scheme of performance for MPs. It is highly unfortunate. Number two, should they continue, and the president assents to this bill later on, and they effect these cuts, Kenyans will still turn around and ask them, you had money to furnish, to facelift State House. You've done budgetary allocation to the deputy president, much as you are cutting down part of the allocation, but you have not revised your salaries. Why is no one talking about 50% salary cut for all the MPs, for starters, and all the CSs, and any other political elective position? That's the conversation we need to start having. Okay. Because a shilling saved here is going to save on the other side. We can raise 100 million or so, just merely revising the salary allocation of these members of parliament and the senators, including even the governors, so that we are able to live within our means. That's what the president was suggesting. Okay. Again, Kenyans need to realize this is a wave not just for Kenya, but for Africa as well. If you look even outside Africa, all the occupation, peaceful occupation, have been carried out by a generation that is sensitive to the issues of the day. Just a few months ago, we've been contending with the issue of Palestine and Israel. And we've seen youths coming out from both ends, agitating for peace and release of the hostages. We've seen in the States, Occupy West, what they call it. Youths come out and they camp, and they agitate. And they say their voices must be heard. They raise issues across the divide. If you look at the population that comes out, they don't lean towards any political ideology. They say this is an issue that affects our lives today, and we need to deal with it. You, as the government, you are not the ultimate power. We are, as the people. As like say, the hoi polloi have spoken. And Papa Aroma would understand that statement very well, that the masses are saying, we are not agreeing with the stand that the government is taking. Okay. Whether you pass this bill or you do not, you must listen to what we are saying. Okay. If they do not, and I see a very unfortunate unfolding in the near future, it's going to be very peaceful but chaotic at the same time. This
kind of grandstanding and because even on the front page of the Business Daily is being referred to as blackmail. It is. The kind of budget cuts. And on the business, People Daily too, they're talking about house of blackmail. This kind of reaction from government, that could have a negative effect, especially in dealing with this particular generation. Previous generations may have probably taken a back step with this kind of threat, that this is how painful it's going to be for you. But Danton, this time round, this kind of response to this generation may have a different kind of effect. Do you agree with that?
No, I would definitely agree, because I think the best approach would be listening to what people are saying. People want to have a conversation, and the government failed from the onset of it. We did not have an organic public participation. Yes, there was public participation, and the CSOs submitted their memoranda as is mandated by the Constitution and Parliament studying orders. But you see, the generation we are talking about are not people who get information traditionally, like we would expect. People sit down watching news, people reading newspapers and what have you, and submitting memoranda as a form of public participation. This generation is not doing that. This generation needs you to come out, needs you to have a conversation. If you see the lives that these people are doing, they said, we want to go to Parliament. We want these people to sit down with us and tell us, what's in it for us? What is that so urgent that they have to tax very basic commodities that can't wait until maybe the economic status of the country is maybe doing better? But the country is not doing that. If we riot today and then you have a press and then you say we have cut down A, B, C, D, and Z, you have done that, but have you solved the problem? Have you looked at what is sending people out in the streets? And as much as I would like to agree with my friend and colleague Hans that there is need for the government to raise money. There is need for the government to pay loans. There is need for the government to finance the budget. But the problem we are all having is can we reduce, or can we in fact avoid the deficit we are having? Because just the other day our budget was around 3.65 trillion. Now we are talking about 4 trillion. But in a government where we are saying we want to reduce borrowing, we have borrowed more. And then we are looking at, the budget says we have reduced the deficit, but from the trend we see from the KRA, it's unlikely that we have a reduced deficit. In fact, we have an increased deficit because we missed the tax revenue target by a huge margin. Yes. Okay, and then there are other core issues that are hidden behind the bill that are so sensitive. In fact, I think yesterday, the African Union Commission on Human and People's Rights was very sensitive on why would you mandate a revenue collection authority to people's data without court, without court ordering that. KRA is going to have direct access to our data, allegedly to raise more money. Okay, we might not have a problem with that, but we're having a problem with that because one, we're infringing our privacy. Number two, if you get all this money, what is there to show for it? So I would think in my own perspective, the government is taking the wrong approach. Okay. The right approach would be, let's call to the table the young people. Let's explain to them what is that so urgent that we need to, because actually there is a problem, because we are going to the trajectory that Ghana was a few years ago, I think 2-3 years ago, when they had to announce it was not bankruptcy, but it was instability or inability to pay their debts. In fact, the IMF had to call for a haircut of 30 to 40%. They had to request for a haircut from the IMF so that at least they stay liquid and be able to sustain their government. But for us not to get there is not to ignore the youth, but to listen to them, have a conversation, and have better policies other than being so punitive and being insensitive of what is happening in the country right now.
All right. And I'm just looking for, yes, and I found it here. It's just a comparison of the budgets that we have in the region. In dollars, Rwanda, 4.43 billion USD. Uganda, 19.2 billion. Tanzania, which is way bigger, almost double the size of Kenya by land mass and even population, 18.9 billion shillings, $1 billion US. But when you come to Kenya, 31 billion USD. And one wonders, Hans, we seem to be very ambitious in our budgets. At a time when we are saying we're in dire straits, we don't have the money, we cannot afford this. It's like me saying I earn 20,000 shillings, but I want to live in a house worth 70,000 bob. If I don't have the money, is it right to go that route? That is what Kenyans are, and Gen Zs are asking that same question. If we cannot afford it, why do we want to live an expensive life?
Fred, we cannot compare Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda. Kenya is at a different level, and we wouldn't want to discuss much about the other countries, but we are moving to other levels of income countries. And we need to study also on how other countries have really managed to be where they are, to be a first world class country, to have good roads, to have better access to education, health, good security. You know, when I listen to my colleagues here try and discuss on how a Gen Z is feeling, I also want to imagine the demands they have. If you study the demands that Kenyans have today, everywhere the president goes, they demand for a road. Mm-hmm. And if you do your research, you realize that on Mata's road network, we've only managed to around access of 30%. The Kenya Kwanza government is trying to target maybe to around 40% access in maybe 10 years. To open new roads needs funding. To maintain the roads that are already there needs funding. If you also observe, there are things like we've had thugs in the streets, maybe like breaking into cars in the streets. You get it? We need good security. There are people retiring today, so we need new recruitments. So if you really study on how to fund these things, all the cars like the ones that are being used by the officers, both in Kenya Defense Forces, police, you need to fund their fuel, you need to buy new vehicles. You see, the other day we had issue with the CDF chopper because an old one. If today you place a budget of buying a new one, there'll be a reaction. If you study the private jet for the president, was purchased in 80s. It is an old one. If today they place in a budget that we need a new one today, people will say, why would the president buy a jet for himself? But if suppose we lose the president, there are many things that needs funding in our country. And the only way to do is to get taxes. We are trying to reduce the budget, or actually the government is trying to reduce the budget and increase the taxes on the other end, so that at least we manage the gap of
let's be fair.
Let's be honest.
To the budget. We've moved from 3.65 to 4 trillion shillings.
Yeah, because why? We reduce what we are paying as debt, and then we remain with more to development. Mm-hmm. And check into the issues of, like now, we have many interns in Ministry of Education, many teachers are there for GSS. And there are some who are yet to be confirmed on permanent and pensionable. We need more employment. The same youths who were protesting yesterday want help. They'll get the same help to go to school and clear. They'll have decrease in maybe diplomas or any kind of certification in the few years to come. How will they get an employment? There's something that let me just explain it briefly. There is a way a government works. This financial bill that my friend here had asked it, what is it did we see with the last financial bill that had happened? What was taxed in the last year? When there is a way a government system works. If today, for instance, they want to build a road, maybe from Mombasa to Nairobi, the government has to plan on how to get that money. Then they tax it, for example. And once that government have that money, they have that money and they have a budget for it. It has to go through maybe procurement processes. Once you have a procurement process and the process goes on smoothly, maybe there are no issues of cases in court against it and so on, a contractor goes to the site. It will take him years to finish that road, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line. So you feel the impact of it like 4 years after. There's something we want, even for us who are farmers then back in Eldoret. If you go to your farm today in January, you'll plow it. Then you plant it probably in April. You'll harvest it in maybe November, December, and maybe you sell it. You cannot maybe plant it in April and you want to harvest it in the same April. If today we are beginning to tax today, A pothole in the road will not go out today. It has to go through a procurement process. All what we are saying is this: the government is having a plan to make sure there is a good kind of living in a long term. When these youths will understand what the youths are feeling today is their current state. But when there will be a proper empowerment for them to understand that if we do this, if there's these taxes that come in, this is the reason for it. What the government is trying to do is to ensure that in the next few years, we can be able to manage ourselves as a country. So we reduce the kind of, we reduce the debts, the money we pay for the debt slowly, and we try to manage ourselves and fund our own projects.
Then let's talk about corruption, if as a route of saving government resources. The retired President Uhuru Kenyatta sensationally claimed that this country loses about 2 billion shillings a day through corruption. If you do simple mathematics, in a year that goes up to more than 700 billion shillings. This finance bill that is so controversial right now was only intended to raise about slightly more than 330 billion shillings. Meaning, if you fight corruption successfully, even if you are only half successful in fighting corruption, you'd be able to cover the expenditure, or at least the revenue that was being targeted. How come we're not seeing a proactive approach from the state to fight corruption, to ensure pilferages are contained, and to seal those loopholes? Because that in itself is a solution.
Well, before I even get to that, Fred, I feel for Hans, my colleague, because during slavery, there used to be two types of what would be called niggers. There was a house nigger, the Negro who used to live with the boss in the house, who used to eat well, dress well, clean himself, and live in the house, main house. And the others who used to work in the farm. Now Hans sounds like the house nigger who says, the boss is feeding us, let's not agitate him. If we don't know where we'll be taken to the next boss. It is unfortunate. And there's a lady who said when they were trying to help slaves find their freedom, that I would have freed most of them had they known that they were slaves. They had been so ingrained in the identity of being owned and working for the bosses, they could not see anything wrong. And then the idea to show them otherwise, that they can live and find new ventures and new life, was frowned upon. Why I say this is because, Hans, and Kenyans who are listening at large, we all understand that the government does not work. The only way it can raise resources is through taxation. And that's why compliance is a major issue for the government. And that's why President Kibaki said, tulipe uhuru, tujitegemee. We raise resources, we utilize our resources, and our country is going to develop. Where this current administration that we worked so hard to put in office has failed is in management of the policies. It is okay to say that Gen Z are not understanding what this finance bill and the impact on the economy is going to be. You can live in utopia and say that. But on the other hand, you must understand that raising taxation scares away developers, investors, and we have seen a hemorrhage of investors leaving the country. Investors whom would have created job opportunities for this youth that we are saying are out in the streets. So, increase on taxation does not automatically lead to collecting more revenue through the KRA. So, the government cannot be funded. It is not automatic. Actually, it is common sense.
Perfect example, last year, even after the Finance Act with all the levies, the
as Danton said, we fell short of the collection. And it is common sense, just basic financial global understanding, that the more taxes you charge, the less you're going to have. The less you're going to have, the more you have to borrow if you cannot sustain your development agenda. Therefore, it is upon the president and his team to revise, again I say this, financial architecture, because it is not working. You'd rather go down on the taxation percentiles, and then hopefully you can collect more. And then, now to your question of corruption.
I thought probably you're trying to slide away from that.
No,
that
far from it.
Many people are reluctant to talk about the effect of corruption in this budget. Yet, according even to the Auditor General,
yes.
she said there's a lot of budgeted corruption in this.
And that's why you see even Kenyans are saying, we are not willing to pay more. Because as my colleague said here, this ending financial year, if we go by the Auditor General's report, a lot of spillage has happened, which is corruption, budgeted corruption. You will hear of inflated budgets about now road construction, about schools, about TVET, the housing, the affordable housing projects. There are a lot of questions that are coming up. So corruption is what is eating us. If we were losing 2 billion per day in the previous administration, I would hate to imagine how much we are losing in this administration, given all the concerns people are having around the resource, the management of our resources. Corruption is a white elephant that goes unspoken about, it goes unaddressed, and that's why you see there's a lot of duplication. And I like giving the example of education system because it's clear to every person in this country that an MCA gives bursary, a governor does, a woman rep does, and an MP does. Why? Why? And this is just one system we're talking. It's one education system we're still talking about. It is the same government that is, dispersing all these resources to all these people. And you can imagine how much is wasted by all these different offices on managing and running these bursary disbursement activities. If it was one function, we would save money. So corruption is not just the actual stealing of resources. And I think we saw earlier in the month, a former, Nairobi County clerk whose resources and properties were recalled, about 300 million, It's not just the actual stealing of such resources, it is also misuse and its mismanagement of our resources. So it's a bigger scope. It goes beyond the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Committee coming up with some guidelines. We need to ingrain the art of utilization of resources. That's the only way we are going to come out of this debt repayment. That's the only way we are going to borrow. There's nothing wrong with borrowing, but should we borrow and utilize, there's going to be productivity. Yes. And then we revolve it back to the economy.
Yes. And this Gen Zs have asked that question about prudent use of these resources. Fine, you want to collect, and probably last year they managed to collect. But are the resources being spent well? You raised that question of the fact that Kenyans are now understanding how their money is being spent. When people see money being dished out, left, right, center, they're questioning, okay, where exactly is this money coming from? People have an understanding of how probably what 1 billion shillings is, of what 3 million shillings is, 5 million that is being carried in a handbag and given to a church. People understand and they're questioning, where is this money coming from? We're not really saying it is money, we're not even questioning the source, but people have that kind of understanding. The question of how is our money being spent probably has never been asked before. The Gen Zs are asking that question, but no one is answering that. Don't you think that that particular issue, that's a problem?
No, I think the corruption problem is in fact the elephant in the room. It's one which is bringing all about this debate because one notable fact in the budget, people are talking about the 0.8 billion budget in undisclosed funding. It's not that it's unheard of. It exists in other budget, in other states, in other countries. There is budget that should be confidential, but we are talking about a good percentage of the budget.
Almost 1 billion.
Almost 1 billion, undisclosed. So what is that so much that these are our taxes we are paying? What is that so big that we can know none of? If you can just wake up and say 800 billion, this spending that we are not going to talk about, tomorrow will come with 1 trillion, the following day will come with 1.5 trillion, okay? And then, of course, the auditor will come and give a report and then will be summoned. You saw the previous year, the Minister of Defense was summoned to Parliament. Then he said, I cannot talk about that, it's defense issues, And then what? So we cannot fully bring, if we cannot freely bring to book the people who are using our money, then the question is going to be there because it's more like the government is not so willing to come to the table and say, okay, this is the state of our corruption, but we are trying this much to fight corruption, And then again...
Have you had that conversation
no,
in this administration that the fight against corruption?
No, we don't have that conversation.
We no longer talk about that.
We no longer talk about that. In fact, I also wanted to respond to my colleague Hans. During Kibaki's time, you know, the way I said, everywhere the president goes, people are requesting for roads and hospitals and what have you. We are Africa, and Africa is our business. If we see a politician, we see hope. We see solutions to our problems because we are paying taxes. So we are going to say, our hospital is this and that, our road is this and that. But during Kibaki's time, and you'd see all these videos over the internet and else in other platforms, if you ask Kibaki, we want this and this and this and this, and he'll say, I did not make the budget. You made the budget. What you're asking is not in the budget. So let's wait until we have a budget and then we can make the road and build the school and what have you. But now we have a government who will stand by the roadside and make declarations, huge declarations that have not been budgeted for. Then you wake up and then you say, we are going to build this road from point A to point B. This is 2 months to, 3-6 months between a budget that has not has already been spent, has already been allocated. You know, so the generation we are living in right now is not one that can be sandwiched by, you know, I'm not calling it propaganda, but you cannot just put words and then expect people to be, oh, hell, you know, you're doing the right side because you said that this and this and this. They're going to question, you said this the other time. You'd see those analyses. The government said this, they did not do this. You said you are going to allocate this amount of money to do this, but you're not doing it. So did you allocate and then you stole that money? Or did you lie to us in the first place? People are going to ask that. So if the government is to address the elephant in the room, I would note 2 facts. Number one, we need to have a conversation with our people, okay? Because we want to assume we are going to have a press conference and tell people, oh, please celebrate because I brought you this problem and then I solved it myself. But that was not the problem. Let's solve the real problems. Let's have a conversation. Number 2, corruption. We are, you know, the fact that we are not talking about corruption, the fact that the government is not having a conversation about...
You think we lost that fight?
We are so much deep into corruption that it is normalized. You know what we would think as corruption, even we citizens ourselves, we are so much deep into corruption that it is part of the
we no longer
life.
see anything
we no longer
wrong with
see
it.
anything wrong with it.
Hans, and I'm looking at a headline from yesterday on the Daily Nation.
Yes.
The headline read, "Off the Hook." It was about what happened with the former Migori governor, Kothobado. He got an out-of-court settlement out of ESCC dropped 2 billion shilling corruption cases against him. In exchange, he had to give away or relinquish ownership of properties, different properties amounting to about 235 million shillings. And of course, there are nitty-gritties about this deal that we may not understand, but such a glaring headline. And one may wonder, we have seen ESCC arrest so many former governors in dramatic fashion and arraign them in court with their spouses and children. We are yet to see a single conviction. Yeah? It would appear that this discussion about corruption ended a long time ago. We no longer talk about it. It is no longer a consequential fight. We gave up on it. How come even when we're discussing the budget and the kind of dividends that we may gain from fighting corruption, that this conversation does not arise?
Hi, just let me just respond something on to Danton, then I can handle this. One is, Danton, you're talking about Kibaki time, and you're talking about that Kibaki used to say, you are the guys who made this budget, or you are the people who made this budget. Let me tell you one thing, budget making process is not something you do it on a day, maybe on a one day or a weekday. It takes time. And therefore, how you do this is even when a president goes to a region and people demand or ask or request for a certain road to be done, or a certain referral hospital, or a technical college, that is part of budget making. It's going to be considered. that this is what the people are requesting. And therefore, that's how you get a budget. And just to compare it with Kibaki, because I always say, even to us to refer on Kibaki, let us refer on all things that he did. There is a clip that is also going around, and you say it can be found on internet, that Kibaki is saying, I am happy to you Kenyans, because you've accepted to pay taxes 3 times more as you did. And that is the only way that the country is going to develop, that we will even be ready to pay for 4 times much better. It is the same way that is going to happen. But one thing that we must understand is that if a taxation is happening today, the same kind of, we are not going to get the impact of that taxation today. It might take us maybe 2 to 3 years, then we see the importance of that taxation that has happened. Because if you're going to maybe invest in education, you'll begin seeing new teachers being recruited. If you're going to do it in the security sector, you'll begin to see the country getting secure on maybe the kind of machines the country is going to get, and so on. So my issue is, on issues also you're talking about the budget that is not maybe at times exposed, like the one for Kenya Defense Forces. There is not on matters security of the country. You cannot expose everything on limelight. It cannot be everything. In all the governments, even in the world, even in the US, they cannot bring all the budget of that security. Even the kind of security machines used, you cannot expose them publicly.
You know, the issue is not, I would interrupt just a little bit.
Yeah,
the issue is not whether, I agree with you. It exists even in other governments. The issue is not what. The issue is how much. How much of our taxes are we going to misuse in the name of defense budget? If we are talking about 800 billion of unaccounted taxes, then we have a bigger problem than what is being presented to us.
It is accounted actually. It's just that it's not exposed much. But then the defense department has a huge budget. Like now it has become to around 166 billion is proposed, but the current is 173 billion. So it is a serious docket that needs a serious funding. But anyway, on issues of corruption, and the one you are discussing about the Obado case, I was discussing with a friend yesterday, and we said, at times, many cases are instigated politically. At times are not of good intention. At times it's not the real issue behind it. And and the others could be assumption. And all these cases are more of accusations until you are proven guilty about it. And let me give a simple example on how it can happen. If by any chance today, Fred, you're a governor of TV47, and maybe Hans gets to a tender, maybe of building an administration block of this county called TV47. And then maybe there is an accusation that maybe Hans is maybe a king, and therefore there is how you've done, maybe you've given me a direct tender. You get it? Because maybe probably there's an ESC that has been given either to EACC or whatever. And that's why even you always get that many times a DPP is being told, when you have a case, make sure it has all the kind of evidences to show.
Do you believe there's corruption in Kenya?
There is, but I want to give you an example for this on why some of the cases...
How come we've not seen any conviction in a corruption case in a very long time? That's the question.
Yeah, okay. I want to give my response first based on this Obado case, and probably give my thought on maybe the other cases. So for this case is that when you're being told that when I've been given a tender maybe to build an administration block and it's going to cost it 100 million, you get it? Yeah? And maybe you've given to Hans, who is maybe your brother or your sister, or maybe it is told the same way in the accusation. And it ends that the same administration block will be built. Maybe Hans will make his profits from there, but there will be administration block standing. But there will be a mindset in the public domain that Fred, the governor of TV47, went with 100 million shillings. But we have a building, it has been paid, it is serving the people, but there is a case behind.
Because of the nepotism.
So if you talk about 2 billion, it is not that someone went with 2 billion shillings to his own. Probably these projects of 2 billion were done, but probably maybe didn't follow the procurement procedure. So corruption is in different ways. This one, maybe it only went through a wrong procedure, but then maybe probably the right thing was done, but the procurement procedure was wrong. So there are many ways we will look, and maybe there's even a time president was being misquoted when he was a deputy president, when he said the country can still develop even when there is corruption. It is because at times it is the kind of process that it went that maybe there is a case behind it that it didn't go well. But then if you follow, if you really follow, you'll realize that there is no much money that is being lost. Maybe it is the process that was done. And the reason why maybe there are no other cases, people being convicted, I think for that maybe we will leave it to the authorities to tell us. Yeah, but my mind is at times the courts have a right to be on.
Are you persuaded by Hans's argument? Because
far from
I'm
it.
lost.
Far from it, because if we create a leeway on like reducible minimum levels
how
of
much we can accept
corruption,
yes,
that can stretch to billions of money. While I agree with him that corruption has many faces, there is a procedural allocation of resources, what I would not dare to defend is any corruption allegation, because where there is smoke, there is fire. But largely, we've been failed by a lack of institutional independence. You know, EACC will come in, DPP will come in, but the case just collapses through. It is true, some of the cases are politically instigated. But on the other hand, we have seen inflation of projects, budgetary allocation of projects, whereby a project that maybe costed about 300 million, but here it was 650. And when you go through the procurement process, you realize a lot of that cost, there were kickbacks. We've seen even the current CS Rhodes Murkomen has been accused of getting kickbacks. The other day he was receiving money from Dubai, and it is known, $100 million and more. And
it is an accusation, though.
It is well, I'm not the judge.
It has not been proven.
It has not been proven, but we've heard of. That's what I said. We've heard of that, and it is in public domain. That's what I mean when I say it is known. Another front of corruption would be the president himself. And actually, I don't know whether he knew, but he was confessing to being involved in corruption or an illegal activity by accepting a gift from the Dubai friends of a jet and the budget to get to the US and back. As a president, he should not, because it brings a conflict of interest. So corruption has levels, and the perception is that it is only about stealing of money or misuse of resources. It is about the suppression of the rule of law. As a country, we are governed by the rule of law. We keep talking about this every day, but the implementation is, has fallen short. Anytime we suppress whatever laws we have put in our constitution, that is corruption. That is going against what the majority have agreed. We have even gone ahead and stamped that it is okay for every traffic police officer to collect money from our matatus early morning. Go drive any road now, you'll see them. Everybody knows. CS Kindiki knows. Remember, they were talking about giving them uniforms that do not have pockets. What are we saying? We cannot bury our head in the sand like the ostrich.
We've lost the fight.
We have lost it, and perhaps...
That's why we can't even consider it as a way of plugging the budget deficit.
Precisely, and especially with this house. And let me just throw a spanner in the works. We have an accused member of parliament who is accused of shooting and killing a person in Thika, the MP Kagombe. He's still going to the assembly, much as the matter is in court. But at what point will we come up with laws and regulations and policies that pave way for investigation? Because in other, what we try to perceive as the progressed democracies, he would have stepped aside from his duties as a member of parliament, pending investigation and waiting for a ruling and judgment on that matter. But life goes on as if nothing happened. So when we talk, that is now what I'm saying, suppression of the rule of law. I'm not saying he's guilty, I'm not saying he's innocent, but if there are any accusations, people need to step aside, awaiting investigation and conclusion of the matters they're being accused of. So we've lost the fight, and I have no hope.
So we shouldn't even look at the fight
not
against
in this
corruption
administration.
as a possible solution, Danton.
Just give a response to Kamanya Friday. If the same, there's something I want to imagine. We are seeing this kind of demonstration is not organic.
Who's saying?
It is organic. We are saying it is organic.
Some people are claiming it's not organic.
People are claiming. My thinking is, if there are no people behind this, demonstration. Why does the same youth or the same Kenyans choose that today we are not going to give our bribes to police? Why should their stand be double? All we are saying is this, Kenyans understand all these things we are discussing today. Why is it that if you see today the way it was voted in parliament, any member of parliament who is an Azimio didn't vote yes? And any member of parliament in Kenya Kwanza didn't vote not. There is still a lot of politics playing in here. Probably Kenya Kwanza team are voting yes because they are part and parcel of this budget, because they are trying to fund their manifesto. Why is it that there is no single person in the opposition who is probably supporting this budget? Do you want to mean that those who are in the opposition are the most saved and the most good, and the other ones who are in government are worse? There's a drawing line completely, that we don't have mixed reactions or mixed mind thinking here. And to respond to something else is that when a president says today we got maybe friends who stood up with me to go to the United States, we complain. If he spends a lot of money, we complain. This again, double check. If you also, the same accusations we are asking ourselves, the president, one thing I just love is what the president said. He said, I am happy now. We are at a level whereby there are many Kenyans who know what finance bill is. And we're in a position where we are discussing. It means we are progressing and we are going to better way to know where we are heading.
Okay. Back to the issue about corruption. Do you agree we've lost it completely? And we cannot consider that because we have a budget of 4 trillion shillings. We are clearly at least 1 trillion shillings, even with the KRA projections, we at least 1 trillion shillings less from what we can collect and the budget that we're talking about. We're looking for ways to plug in this budget deficit. Budget cuts could be one of them. Fighting corruption and sealing pilferage and loopholes that lose government money is the other. But it would appear that we are all in agreement that corruption is not an avenue of us to save money. Fighting corruption cannot save us money. Do you agree with that?
As I said earlier, we've lost. You know it's hard because let me pinpoint what Hans said, that why are the youth not coming out to fight corruption? Why would they come and fight government? I wouldn't expect him to speak like that. We also in the government, and we understand how government works. We understand that we, the people, donate power to people who we presume are going to represent our interests, are going to fight for us, are going to govern us. So if corruption is an issue of governance, the same people who we have voted, whom we have donated power to, we have not given them power, we have donated so we can take it back. So if we donate their power to them and they are not using it, we have every right to come back to them and ask them, we have given you power, what are you doing with it? Mm-hmm. Why are we permitting cultured corruption? It is so deep in the culture that is part and parcel of us. Like we said, we cannot wake up one day and say we are not going to bribe the police because one, the people who have given power are not doing nothing about it. It is part of our culture. It's part of our culture. If you are a matatu driver, you drive into town, you don't give your 100 bob. I'm more worried about. You don't give your 100 bob. You'll stall. You're not going to work. You're not going to put put food on your table. Okay.
As we come to the end of this conversation, as you make your final remarks, the question is now. The Gen Zs have come out. They said they don't want amendments to the finance bill of 2024. They want it rejected. We have already crossed that bridge. Parliament would have rejected it yesterday. They did not. They actually passed it to the next level, now to consider the amendments, meaning whatever the Gen Zs were demanding or protesters were demanding, National Assembly has simply said, no, that will not happen. So what next, as you give your final remarks?
Well, we've not lost. Gen Z have not protested all for nothing because the president may refuse to assent to the bill when it gets to him. That's the only hope.
That's why you have hope.
That's the only hope we have as of now. But I will say this. An uprising is here with us. And let us not be blindfolded. Let our emotions not be whipped. by this budgetary allocation and cuts. Kenyans are saying we have no faith in this government, and I would want the president to know that. And this financial architecture is not working. It is unfortunate that the members of parliament have chosen loyalty to the president and their political party over loyalty to the people who have delegated that authority of them to be in that National Assembly. How I wish that going forward, we are going to have a National Assembly that is a pure representation of the people who have voted them into office. And I'm glad that serikali has been inatenga billions of money that nothing, and there's nothing to show for it. Sisi kama wa Kenya, tumetenga. The date is 10th August 2027. Do all you may in these 3 coming years. But on August 10th, 2027, we have a date with you, from the president to the MCA.
All right.
Yes.
Hans?
I would say this change is painful. There is nothing that you really want to make a difference in your life that is sweeter. Every time there is a real passion for change, it is always painful. And when you're going through pain, you may not realize until you get that kind of change in you. Then you will appreciate the pain you went through. And therefore, this kind of taxes will change our country and our lives. Growth needs sacrifice. If we are to grow our country and ourselves, and even on your personal life and your family, we need that kind of sacrifice and growth. My only plea is with the president and those in the executive and maybe the leadership is that these taxes that Kenyans are going to give, kindly let it have a proper management, let it go to the intended purpose, let it deliver as expected, and I know these Kenyans will appreciate in due course. And therefore, I want to say lastly that committing ourselves, sacrificing ourselves to paying taxes is the only way we are going to build and change our country.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Hans, finally, Danton, you wrap it up for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is evident that the initial protest, in fact, it was a march. You know, the police are used to riots. There were no riots. It was a march. It was a peaceful protest, and I would say it bore some fruits, although not much as the protesters expected, but it was something. And I'm sure if it goes on, the people sitting in the committee of the whole, because now we are discussing the budget at the committee of the whole, they are going to listen. The pressure is possibly going to increase, and I believe they are going to listen, even if not so much. And if they don't, as my colleague said, we have a date with them. In fact, today I saw the art at the Daily Nation, where there is a face, I wouldn't say who, saying, let's hurry before the Gen Zs vote in 2027. So this generation is going to have a date with the politicians. In fact, there is a possibility of the generation voting their own to represent us in parliament if the ones holding power are not going to do as expected of them. So I would give my hands up to those who are defending the country, but as much as we are supporting the government in raising taxes, let them do it in the right way. Let them not be so punitive against the common people who they portray to be hustlers, who are the backbone of their politics that projected them into power. Let them not step on us. Let them not. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo hii leo, habari kuu pale tafakari. Thank you so much, Danton Kitumbini, Hans Ropp, and Josephat Kamanya, our political analysts, and our panelists this morning on State of the Nation, as we look at the youth perspective to politics here in Kenya, the protests that were witnessed this past week, especially on the finance bill of 2024. And this discussion will definitely continue. It is a Feel Good Friday right here on Morning Cafe. A lot of